Hey guys, welcome to the Dragon's Voice podcast. I am your host, truly Rhys, and thank you again for tuning in for this show and for the remainder of this lockdown. I know it's a pain, guys, but I think by the time this podcast is released, we'll probably be out of this lockdown. But if not, then stay tight, guys. We'll get there eventually. And I just want to say as well, thank you for sharing, subscribing to my channel, and also following the Dragon's Voice podcast Twitter. It's Dragon's Voice 20. And also thank you for liking the Dragon's Voice Facebook page. But without further ado, let's just get on to the guests, because that's the important thing. So here we go. It's none other than Andrew Mumford, who's played for Swansea, Haverford West. He's played for Wales as well, I've been told as well. Not just under 21s, but you've got a full Wales cap. Is that true?
Yeah, just the one. Just the one.
Do you know what? It was funny though, because when I was doing the research and everything, it said Wales cap and everything, but it said against America. So I thought, right, I'll check what game is that, and it didn't pop up though. Was it against America? And what kind of game was it? Was it a friendly? Was it
It was like an end of season trip, like a friendly sort of thing. Which obviously the first team boys, there was a lot of injuries and dropouts, as you can imagine, and at the end of the season. So they asked a few 21s to go over. So obviously you don't turn the opportunity to go over, do you? So yeah. Off I went.
So let's get down to it. So you're a Swansea lad, played for Swansea, says you made over 100 appearances and everything. And the one thing I've always been very curious about, and I've interviewed a lot of former Swansea lads over the past few episodes. I've interviewed Steve Jenkins, Andy Legg, I've interviewed a few of them. But there was one, but you in particular, because not long ago I was watching From Jack to a King, watching the documentary, and of course they mentioned the relegation battle against Hull City. Now, was you there? Did you take part of that game?
I was injured for the game, and unfortunately, so I was in the stands with my fingers and my legs crossed, put it that way.
And explain to us then, what was the situation like going around in Swansea then? Because I know they were coming out of financial problems with Tony Petty and that, and of course, Brian Flynn, which I'll mention later on in the show. But what was that like for you and the players, especially with all this pressure building?
Well, I wouldn't say we felt the pressure much with the last game. Obviously, the build up the games before we come to that last game, we started to put some performances together, to be fair. Obviously it wasn't easy with the Tony Petty era. Not so much with me, as you said. I was a lot younger than obviously the lot of the players who had mortgages, kids, etc. It is a worrying time. But the age I think I was 21 at the time, 20. I could have just gone back to my parents and hopefully they would have taken me back with open arms. But I could remember we had a game against Bristol Rovers away, and we were waiting to see on the bus outside the Bristol Rovers ground whether they got him out or not, and whether we'd get him paid. And obviously the bad news come that we wouldn't get paid again for the third month, I think it was, in a row. And they basically asked the players whether we wanted to play or not. And, I can tell you wholeheartedly that not one player said he wasn't playing, and we got on with the game. Which, you're going to do it, anyway. We all love football, as you said. It's, it was your profession, and, and you were doing it for the fans as well, as well as yourself and your family, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because one of the things about that documentary is, of course, they were focusing on the Tony Petty era.
Yeah.
I gather that, you were part of that Tony Petty era yourself, being a young lad and everything. What was it like to be, did you ever, because I've seen in the footages that he did come and watch you guys in training and that. What was he like as a person, really, instead of a quote unquote businessman? It's that a lot of Swansea fans would put it, diplomatically.
Well, to be fair, we all sort of realised pretty quick what he was trying to do by all the information that was coming out. So we didn't really have much interaction with him. I can probably count on one hand how many times, I spoke a word to him, if I'm totally honest. We didn't really want anything to do with him. I know that's hard because he was the one, obviously, apparently paying our wages, but he wasn't paying our wages. So we didn't have anything to speak about, really. And as I said, the information come around pretty quick when he took over what he was doing and what he wasn't doing, really. So as for sort of liaising with him about anything or talking about anything to him, we didn't have anything to do with him, really.
Yeah, and it was just, and especially as well because I managed to speak to some Swansea fans that I know because they're Port Talbot Town supporters, and I know you played for Port Talbot yourself, and fair play to some of them. I remember one or two of them, who were supporting Swansea back then. It was just, it's like any other club, you don't know where the club is going. You don't know if it's going to go one way or it's going to go the next. And they were saying, it's just stressful times. And I remember when someone said that he knew someone that tried to damage apparently damaged Tony Petty's car. It turned out it was one of the players or something like that. And it was a bit like, oh, okay, I didn't know who was that, big serious. But in all fairness, never mind about the, what's going on in the behind the scenes and everything. But some of the players that, you played with, I mean, Roberto Martinez, we played with Leon Britton, Roger Freestone. I mean, he's a big name, himself, and Christian O'Leary, James Thomas as well. I always wanted to ask you about these players, and especially with Roger Freestone, because he took over, he was a caretaker manager at one point because you went through a lot of managers during at one point of the season. So what was Roger Freestone like as someone behind this, as the lads, part of the squad, but someone, as a person as well?
Well, I can honestly say he's one of the funniest blokes, I've ever come across. I'm sure most players would tell you that. As for when Rog took over, I think he found it a bit too stressful. I think it was too much for him, if I'm totally honest. And he'd probably admit himself that he didn't want to do it. Rog is the best goalkeeper I've ever come across in all my career. He was one of those keepers. Whenever a cross come in, you knew he was going to pluck it out the air. You had no problem. You hear them on Sky Sports now going that the top teams need a top keeper. Well, luckily for Swansea, they had a top keeper for, whatever it was, 12, 15 years that Rog was there. As a man, he was great. He was great for me when I first come into the changing rooms. Wind-ups, obviously, as you can imagine, with goalkeepers are a different breed. But as making you feel welcome in the changing rooms, he was great. You couldn't have asked for a nicer guy, to be honest. But come management, it wasn't for Rog. He was doing it obviously because he loved the club, and he'd do anything for the club. But as for him enjoying it, I don't think he enjoyed it very much. And I'm sure if you spoke to him, he'd admit that himself, really.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I tried messaging him on Facebook, and he read my message, and he didn't respond back. So I think he's not the kind of person who would probably want to do podcasts, which is fair enough. I mean, I've asked a few former players anyway, whether it's Swansea, Cardiff or anything like that, if they wanted to come on, and they said no, and that's fair enough. Everyone's got their comforts, But you said he was a funny guy. Was there like a funny story of Roger Freestone that stands out for you?
Not many, I can tell, if I'm totally honest with you, Rhys. But just the way he was, just the banter, the everyday banter. He was just brilliant. He used to like a cigar after a good win. He'd have a nice cigar, so when you get him back on the bus from a away trip, you could see the smoke bellowing over the top of the bus. But as far as I'm concerned, with Roy, he's an ultimate professional. Towards the end of the career, he had a lot of injuries with his ankles, etc. But for him to keep going as long as he did with those injuries, I take my hat off to him, really.
Yeah. One person I want to mention as well is going back to James Thomas, because I always felt that it was a bit unfair because of the injuries he had, that his career was cut short and everything. But he's a former Swansea and Llanelli player. But Tell us about James Thomas. What's he like as a person and as a player as well?
Well, I can tell you I'm better than him in golf. We play nearly every weekend together. There's 8 of us, but as a player, in front of goal, if it was 1-on-1, the ball would be hitting the back of the net. He was unbelievable. But as you said, he didn't have much luck when he was down the Swans with injuries. I can remember one when he had about 9 goals in 10 games when he was playing up top, and then he got moved out on the left for some reason. Which if you would speak to James, he'd admit he's never a left winger. He's down the centre. He backed into defenders, and if he had a chance to shoot on goal, it usually went in the back of the net. But as a guy, he's a great guy. He keeps himself to himself. Apart from when we're on the golf course and he's winning by a couple of shots, but as a guy, he's a great guy, and obviously one of them that I've kept in touch since we both finished.
Is he still a paramedic?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Have an injury and then go into being a paramedic.
Exactly. I can remember once we come in and he had gout, and for his guy of his age to get gout, obviously we were giving him stick then to saying he was drinking too much, and obviously the gaffer was winding him up as well and saying, "Oh, I seen you out on Wine Street again," etc. But he was in agony with it. I think he was out for about 6 weeks with it, to be honest, because he couldn't get his boot done.
And going on to the early stages of your career, then. Of course, you broke into the Swansea squad, but you needed some experience, needed playing, and Leighton James comes calling, and you're playing for Llanelli. I always try and I'm on the lookout for Leighton James because I think he'd just be a brilliant person, brilliant character, to talk football, And I've always known that he's a very, open-minded, but he says it as it is. He's one of those people. I've heard him on Talk Sports, especially with Robbie Savage. But what was he like when you were playing for him at Llanelli?
I would say he's probably my best manager I've played under. Just the fact that I like calling a spade, and that's exactly what Leighton does, really. There's no point sugarcoating it. Yourself, if you walk off the pitch and you haven't played well, you don't need a manager telling, "No, you've done well today." Well, Leighton wasn't that. If you didn't have a good game, he'd make sure he tell you. And if you had a very good game, he'd put his arm around you and tell you the exact same thing. Unfortunately, as you said, he speaks his mind, and a lot of the time these days, people don't like to hear the truth, unfortunately. But for me, he was outstanding. As I said, when I broke in the Llanelli first team, I would think I was 16, 17. And, we had, very good team down there at the time with experienced players. Said Leighton James was manager. We had Wyndham Evans, another Swans legend who was assistant. So learning off them too, I couldn't have had a better upbringing footballing wise off them too, really. The amount I learned in Llanelli in those 2 years was phenomenal. Had me in good stead for my career, really.
And especially you had a good career as well, because we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that you earned a Wales cap and everything. When you got the call up to come and play for Wales, how did you respond? Because I know you played for Wales under 21, so you were already have your one foot in the door kind of way. And but when you did get that full Wales cap, how did you find out?
Didn't really have much time to think about it. As I said, it was a lot of dropouts, as you can imagine, after a hard season in the Premiership. A lot of players, need that rest, which is totally understandable, as you can imagine. So I think there was must have been about 8 or 9 dropouts. So I didn't find out till the day before that another one had dropped out. And would I be able to go? Which, as I said, you're not going to turn it down. I think there was about 2 or 3 21s who went there as well, or maybe 4 of us really. But training, we used to train with them a lot. As you said, we'd play and train for the week on the build up to a game, and they'd ask a few of us to train with the first team as well. So, which as I said, which was a great great understanding, because you got to know the first team boys pretty well as well. So Oh, he was good.
There was a story that I heard on the Ambition is Critical podcast, and shout out to those guys as well, because it was a very good podcast. Thoroughly enjoyed it. There was a time where you snuck out with the Wales team to have a couple of drinks or something like that. And what was the party atmosphere like for you and the Wales squad, or some of the Wales squad anyway?
No, it was difficult on time, obviously, because the 21s would usually play the day before the first team, which is obviously a bit of a risk, really, just in case you had a couple of injuries in the session in the morning, in case you get called up to the squad. But they had a full team, so a few of us obviously sneaked out. I think it was out in Finland. It was the first game of the European Championships, and I think we had a good draw over there. I think it was 1-1, which was a very good result over at the time. So a few of us obviously just sneaked out for a couple of drinks, and we got back at a reasonable time, Rhys. And, that's the truth.
I could just see it, and I was like, keep your voice up, keep it down. And then all of a sudden, Mark Hughes comes like, "Right, come on, you got to play for Wales." Like, oh, really? Yeah. But Mark Hughes as a manager, I know I spoke to a few people, but to you, what was he like as a manager, and especially because of his background, playing for Wales, playing top flight football, not just in the Premier League, in top English football, but also in Germany as well. But what was Spain as well? Sorry, did he play in Germany as well?
I'm not sure. I know he was Barcelona.
Well, I know he was Barcelona, but I don't know if he played in Germany. I don't know why I said that, if it isn't. But I keep thinking he played for Bayern Munich or something like that. And watch now, we finished this podcast, and I was like, oh, freaking hell, he did. But what was he like just to be around Mark Hughes at that time?
He was very welcoming. As you said, if you got called up for the 21s to have a training session with the first team, he'd always make sure he'd obviously come up to you, as you said, have a chat with you. If there was something you needed to improve on, which he's seen in the game for the 21, he'd always have a chat with you, etc. So for me, he was great. He'd always obviously tell you what you needed to be told, a bit like Leighton James, really. He was obviously straight-faced. He doesn't give much away, as you probably seen from the TV and etc. He was obviously a great professional, a very strong character. So he wasn't the type of bloke you wanted to cross, if I need to put it like that, really.
Yeah. My missus just walked into the room. She's trying to sneak in. No, fair play to it. But I want to go on to, go back to the Swansea era, for you. And of course, I have to mention this. Being from Barry, growing up in Barry, I'm not a Cardiff. I used to be a Cardiff supporter, but I stuck supporting Barry Town. But I want to hear the South Wales derby, and if you ever competed in one of them, how tense was it, and what was the most tense match you ever had while playing against Cardiff?
Well, I played one. It was the FAW. I don't know if you remember the FAW Cup final.
The lovely ball and the
yeah. So we had them in the final away at Ninian Park, which for me was, it was a great build-up, as you can imagine. They had a very good team at the time. Obviously, Graham Kavanagh, Leggy was playing, Andy Legg. They had a very good team. So for me, I didn't get over nervous. I was more excited than anything. At my age, I can't remember. I might have been 21 or 22 at the time, but it just makes your hair stand up the back of your neck when you with a game like that, as you said. Getting abused by the Cardiff fan, I used to love that, if you know what I mean. Getting abused by the fans, it's just given for football, really. You should certainly have selective hearing the more games you have. I certainly heard more shouts at the start of my career than I did towards the end. So, but playing in a game like that was, it was great, apart from the result, which we lost 1-0. So, which would have been nice if we could have sneaked the win there, really.
Going on to Brian Flynn now. While doing my research and everything, you had a falling out with Brian Flynn. What was it over, and how did it all come to fruition where you and Brian Flynn had that falling out?
Well, it wasn't really as such as a falling out. I just signed a new 2-year contract with the Swans, which is a very good contract. You know, as I said, I don't know what the other players were on, but I was the only one given a 2-year contract. I just had Player of the year before. There was a few clubs who'd come in for me. So the Swans asked me to sign a 2-year contract and said they put obviously a figure on. If they didn't reach that figure, obviously I couldn't go. But then obviously he come in. Obviously, whether he'd seen how much money I was on and just didn't fancy me as a player, you know, that's life. You know what I mean? I'll be honest, I didn't take it very well because obviously I was playing I had played the year before, and I performed at the start of the season. So it was just a bit of head clashing, really. I couldn't understand why I wasn't playing as much as I thought I should have. And, you know, he wanted to bring his own players in. And the older you get, the more you realise what goes on in football. But at the time, I was young. You know, I was playing week in, week out for my hometown club, and I just found it hard to take, really.
You know what you said about the clubs that were going for you and everything, but one of them was I found really a surprise. I thought, wow, for you, and was Bobby Robson's Newcastle United, because you had a trial there, and he offered you a contract and that. When you went to Newcastle, obviously you had the likes of Alan Shearer there, you know, and Keith Gillespie. I think he was there at the time, and but also Gary Speed. How did the call come for you to go and have a trial at Newcastle? And also, what was it like being the presence of, you know, Gary Speed and Alan Shearer whilst you were there training with Newcastle?
Well, when I was with Leslie at the time, and Tommy Smith, obviously another ex-Swansea player, was obviously up in Newcastle. So they contacted Leslie first of all, and it was in pre-season. So they wanted me to go up, and I was having a chat with Leighton to ask what I was, you know, what should I do, because obviously there was other clubs who made a firm offer to sign as a professional. So I was a bit wary whether to go and whether I'd lose out on the other offers I had. But as Leighton and Wyndham said to me, you know, you can't turn down the opportunity to obviously go up to a Premiership club and, you know, try to see what it's like, to see the standard. I was up there for 3 months. I got offered a 6-month contract, which was, as you can imagine, very difficult to turn down. But, you know, it's at my point in the time, it was very hard to show what you got really in 6 months, especially with the players who were there. You know, I did play a reserve game for them with which was about 40,000 in the stadium, the Newcastle rugby ground. Kieran Dyer was coming back from injury, so, you know, there was 40,000. Then we played against Chelsea, which was an experience, considering I'd probably only been playing. My biggest crowd at that time was probably about, you know, 2,500 when Clancy played Barry at Stevenage Park. So it was a bit of an eye-opener. But, you know, training, you know, a lot of the time I was training with the reserves, which was Kets by year. There was a few foreigners up there, and I trained a full week then with the first team, which put it this way was, you know, as an experience and something in which, you know, which I will, you know, tell my kids, which I have. But unfortunately, I've got a girl, so she's not interested in football, so I can't really tell her. So, but you know, the standard was phenomenal, as you can imagine. As you said, meeting those players. What I found in football is the higher up you go, the more down to earth the players are. And that's how I found up in Newcastle, really. As you said, they were all calling me sheep shagger. There's another sheep shagger here with you, Speedo, and stuff like that. So, you know, it was great. They made you feel welcome. To say I wasn't nervous the first day turning up there would be an understatement. I was actually staying with John Carver, who was the assistant manager for Newcastle at the time. I think he's the assistant for Scotland now, national team. So I was actually stayed with him for 3 months. So, you know, at least I got to pick his brain over tea time to what I need to improve on, etc., etc. So the experience-wise was great, really.
How come How come you didn't get it in the end? Did you say that it was because
Well,
of the 6 months, was it?
yeah, well, I had an offer off Grimsby Town to sign there because I'd been there the year before, and they were in a championship, but the money was offered. It's not, obviously it's not all about money, and it might not have worked out by turning it down. But Grimsby is a good 5-hour drive from Swansea, and I just didn't fancy going up there at my age, that early to do it. And Cardiff had come in for me, which well, it was a bit of a thing with Llanelli. Obviously, I broke into the first team with Llanelli, and Leighton James and Wyndham didn't know that Cardiff had come in for me. They'd obviously contacted the club, and what the chairman of the club didn't tell me, he asked me to sign a contract for Llanelli. And I said yes, because obviously we didn't know anything about it. So obviously my money up went up with Llanelli to, I think it was like £70. But then he asked for 50 grand for me from Cardiff. So that's why Leighton left then. Leighton and Wyndham left because they found out what the club had done. And they weren't standing for it. So, the good thing at the time, I knew I had obviously clubs interested and had offers. So, and then Swansea come in, more or less the last sort of minute of that pre-season, really. And to be fair, I just didn't think I could turn the opportunity down to play for my own town club, really.
Yeah, no, of course, and especially as well that after when you left Swansea, but there was a few moments where this is where I found it complicated, because I know you played for Grimsby, you played for Aldershot, you played for Newport, you played for Merthyr as well. And that's when the research got all over the place, thinking, well, but that's not down to you, that's just down to the internet or Wikipedia. But when you went to these clubs on loan, especially with Newport, Aldershot, and I know you went on a permanent deal with Grimsby, if I'm right in saying so. But when you were on loan to all these clubs, was there a moment where you thought to yourself, am I going to cement myself in the squad? Am I ever going to get into a football club where I could play my football and stay in the squad for a few years and be happy with it? Was that going through your head, or was it just get on with it,
It was my decision to go to Newport and Merthyr, which was the first year I signed for the Swans. I'd obviously done the full pre-season with the Swans, which was great. And then after I think it was like the first 5 games of the season, I realised that, I wasn't going to be involved in the squad. So I asked John Hollins, could I possibly go on loan? Obviously, I knew Newport and obviously Merthyr are playing in the English system, which, with respect to the Welsh system, is a lot higher standard. So I thought it'd be beneficial for me. And to be honest, at my age, I just wanted to play football, if I'm totally honest. As most pros would tell you, there's nothing worse than training every day, and then come Friday, the team sheet goes up for the Saturday, and you're not involved or not travelling away. It's, there's nothing worse. So it was my decision to do it, and it worked out, because as soon as I come back match fit from Merthyr and Newport, I was more or less straight into the side under John Hollins.
In your honest opinion then, considering we mentioned Merthyr and the standards and everything, considering in the position of Merthyr, they can't play their season, so their season's suspended, so they can't really do much about it. In your honest opinion, do you think or reckon that Merthyr should join the Welsh League system, or do you think there should be, do you think they shouldn't, or do you think there should be a way that Merthyr can help themselves out?
Obviously, they got a lot of financial problems there, haven't they? So, financially, probably for the club, it probably would be better. But, there's still travelling costs for going up to North Wales. So, if I was in charge of Merthyr or still involved in Merthyr, I'd tell them every single day to stay in the English system, because obviously the standards are a lot better. You can pick up more players, you get to know more players from across the bridge. Obviously, the main objective is financial with most clubs. Because if Merthyr had money with the players they got in Merthyr, let alone outside of the area, they could go to the conference, they could go League Two. You've seen every club who we pump a bit of money in for 2 or 3 years. Well, look where they are now. Look at Salford. I know that's extreme with, 5 of them with a lot of money putting it in, but, they're at the top of League Two now in, 4 seasons. So, it can be done, and I've seen it getting done by, clubs in the lower English pyramid, but it can work the other way as well. If you pump money in for those 2 or 3 years and you don't do anything, the club is in a bad position. But if I was Merthyr, I tell them to stay where, exactly where they are, because the standard of Welsh football, the Welsh Prem hasn't gone up since I was playing it. And if you ask a lot of them who are still involved, the managers, they probably tell you the same.
It's kind of like a balance where there's a yes and no answer to most of it, because it is a very complicated and very delicate topic to discuss, especially with Merthyr, because there's a lot of, don't get me wrong, I'm all for Merthyr going into the Welsh League, but that's just one's opinion. But it is but I've always been honest and said it's such a delicate and complicated discussion, because what is the best interest for the club, I do feel sorry for the Merthyr fans, but I've got it. This is why when I started doing this podcast, that's why I had to be a bit more diplomatic and be more straightforward. And but I remember before I started this podcast, I used to get into serious arguments with the Merthyr fans, and oh my God, but come back when one day, hopefully I'd love to see it again, a Merthyr and Barry Town derby. Oh, I would love it. Rub my hands. Oh, that would be brilliant, because you guarantee the atmosphere is going to be brilliant,
Yeah.
But going on to the Welsh League system, because you've played for Haverfordwest, Llanelli again, and I'll mention Llanelli in a minute. You played for Aberystwyth and that. I want to mention Llanelli again when you moved there on a permanent deal. My God, I've got the list here actually, because me on the spot, I can't think of names when I'm on the spot. It's so complicated. But you had the likes of Gary Lloyd, Rhys Griffiths, Andy Legg, Steve Jenkins, Jason Bowen, Lee Phillips. There was Matt Jones, so many more, and it was led by Peter Nicholas. That club, and especially you're part of it. That was and of course they did a Welsh Premier League winning squad. But what was that like to be part of that whole club and squad during that time?
It was a team too good for that league, but they were paying money. They were paying big money. Because I went over to Australia, and I went over there for 2 years to play. I had an offer to go over there with the Eurooe A-League, so I decided to go over there for a couple of years, which was great. I come back, I signed for Talbot, which was the FAW. I scored against the Swans in extra time in that FAW for Talbot, and Nico then rang me to say, listen, come to Llanelli, we're building something special here. So, I didn't think twice, because I know Nico obviously from the Swans when he was down there with Colin Addison. So I signed with Llanelli, but as you said, the side we had there was phenomenal. I think that year we won it. I think we only lost one game. I think that was against Porthmadog or something, some bottom table team at home on a Saturday with no crowd there. And I think it was, we obviously took our foot off the gas, but I think we battered everyone that year. I think, we won it convincingly. We also won the League Cup, I think, and then we lost in the final then to Bangor in the Welsh Cup. So we almost done, obviously, the clean sweep, really.
Yeah, there was a final. I think it was the final. It was at Leighton Park, and it was the Welsh Cup final. But there was a little incident where the Bangor City fans ran on the pitch, and I think your goalkeeper got attacked. Yeah. What was that like to be playing in the Welsh Cup final? But also, can you explain to us what was your thoughts when the Bangor City fans came on the pitch and attacked the goalkeeper? Was you a bit annoyed, or was you a bit,
To be honest, just obviously pathetic. It was only about 15, 20 of them. Rhys is, it wasn't exactly. It was as if they were going to do a lot of damage to us if they wanted to kick off. I'll be honest with you, but they just got overexcited. They've been drinking all day, as you said. They were 2-1 down last minute. One of their players lobs out keeper, and it's 2-2, and it's going to extra time. So. Listen, I don't blame them for being a bit excited, but what they done, they didn't really do too much. But I'm not condoning running on the pitch, but it wasn't really a big thing really. Not in my eyes, anyway.
Yeah. No, honestly, I get you. Do you know what? With that though, because you were talking about the standards of the Welsh League and everything like that, and of course you played in the Welsh Premier League and everything for various clubs and that. Was there ever, what was the best game where, in terms of football atmosphere in the Welsh League, that stood out for you?
Well, Bangor was always a tough one to go to away from home, especially when Llanelli went up there, because obviously it was usually atop the table sort of thing. Also, Rhyl had a good following. That was always a tough ground to go to. The good thing with Bangor and Rhyl, the grounds are a bit like an old conference ground. The crowd are right on top of you. It felt like a proper game of football. The rest of the grounds used to go to, a lot of them, are very poor, in mid Wales. But they have improved, obviously, because most of them have gone 4G. But, whether you like playing on 4G, I wouldn't like playing on it week in, week out, if I'm totally honest. I'm glad I finished now, because I just don't find it proper football, if I'm totally honest with you. Because when you watch it sometimes and someone chips the ball over the top and it just checks on the surface, and then, when you're running onto it, well, if it's wet and it's grass and you chip it through, a lot of the time it's just going to skid through to the keeper. So it wasn't a surface that I like playing on. But, standard-wise now, I don't think there's much money in it at all. In many of the clubs, obviously most of the money now is up north again, which you have Connors Quay, TNS. Obviously TNS have always been players, but they've always been a pro team as well. So, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time, but I wouldn't say we took it too seriously as well, if you know what I mean. I think a lot of the time it was sort of finishing your career off with decent money, really, in Llanelli. But, good bunch of boys and obviously winning things, which always helps, really.
Yeah. I think as well. I'll be honest, because growing up, when I went through a phase of supporting Cardiff City, there was a lot of people. I ignorantly agreed that it was sort of like a retirement league, because there would be a lot of former players, especially like Clayton Blackmore, who went to Neath and he went to Bangor, and he just finished off his career there. But I thought it was very poetic that this Manchester United player finished off in Neath. I thought that was a very nice touch. But I do agree that it went through a period where a lot of big players or players that played in the Championship, League One, League Two, or whatever, just went off and just pick up a check and just play football part-time, So I agree. And I think it's only starting now, because I only noticed it when Barry went back into the Welsh Premier League, that there is sort of like a change, but I do feel like it needs to improve, and I do criticise the FAW for that. But
it's down to them. It's down to them to improve it. Clubs can't improve the players they get in if they got no financial backing from the FAW. If they want the Welsh Prem to be a proper league, they got to invest. They'll be quick enough to mourn if they're all getting knocked out in the first qualifying round in Europe, which, let's be fair, happens nearly every year. Okay, they might go through one round, but it's down to them to put money into their national league, and if they don't, it's never going to improve.
Oh yeah, because I remember I had a conversation about it when we're at the clubhouse, and this is a few weeks ago, when obviously keeping social distance and everything, but we were talking about how this League of Wales started, and we all just said the same thing. Whatever the FAW were thinking, they were just more worried about the international side trying to fit place in the FIFA World Cup or the Euros and everything, and instead of actually taking the league very seriously. I mean, no disrespect to Barry, who my team who found success, and they did create some memories in Europe, but it's like with your Llanelli as well, you created some moments and memories, and so did Bangor and TNS. That's the one team I wanted to mention, because you played against TNS. Was it always a good feeling to actually defeat TNS, especially when
Well, that was obviously always the game where, if you won it, you knew you'd had a very good chance of winning the league. Really, there wasn't many teams that you were worried about playing. I'll be honest, in the 6 or 7 years I played in the League of Wales, or 6 year, whatever it was, I think I've only won once and drawn away to TNS. Really, the rest of them have been losses. So that just says how strong they are. But at the time, they were the only team with 4G or 3G, whatever it was. So, they're obviously going to have an advantage because they're training on it every day. So, but they have got some quality players, and plus they can bring them over from Liverpool, which is a lot a bigger pool to pick players up from, really, isn't it? Let's be fair.
Oh yeah, no, I agree, because with TNS, especially because I've spoken to Steve Evans, who came from, the Wrexham area. There's a lot of Wrexham players or former, they may have not broke into the Liverpool side or the Everton sides, but they've got that quality. They've got that professional experience that they can bring towards the table, And I give TNS credit, don't get me wrong. I just think now it's getting to the point, especially with Andy Morrison, Connors Keys, Andy Morrison's Connors Keys, winning the Welsh Premier League title. I think it's getting to the point now where, like I said about the change and adapting, because Barry went through a phase of dominating, but I've always said, and not me being biased, that clubs went in and had that mentality of, let's try and dethrone Barry from that league. Whereas with TNS, no one wanted to do that because everyone just seemed to know that, apart from you, because you won the Welsh Premier League title, but it was always those moments. But going on to you winning the Welsh Premier League title, under Peter Nicholas, what was he like as a manager, to be playing for?
Nico was brilliant. He more or less manages like one of the boys, really. He loves a laugh. But when he needed to be serious, he could be serious as well. Which I think you need to be, really, in the League of Wales, because it's not a professional league. There's no point trying to drag boys in 4 times a week, because they're not going to turn up in 4 times a week, because they're not. They got their main jobs that they've got to work. So, Nico was great. I still speak to him now. But I think he managed it as he should in the Welsh Prem. Really, is being a friend, really, and a mate. And then obviously when he needed to be the manager, be a manager. So, playing under him was great, to be fair. But as you said, the players we had as well. I think we were strong to 1 to 15, really, or 16. So plus we had a very good youth setup coming through, because at that time they got released from the Swans. They'd go straight to Llanelli because they knew the setup was very good. So, we had players coming through all the time.
And also when Peter Nicholas left, it was Andy Legg took over. Was you there when Andy Legg was coming in as manager? Yeah. What was he like then as the manager? I had him on the podcast not long ago, like I said, but and he explained his times and he enjoyed it and everything. But what was he like to play under?
Yeah, Leggy was great as well. Obviously, I knew him as a player, really, as a friend. But again, he was exactly the same. Obviously he's been there and done it as a footballer, so he knew what level he was managing at, so he didn't take it too seriously. As you said, a semi-professional, you train in 2 or 3 times a week, and you playing on a Saturday. The money at the time, well, obviously at the time in Llanelli was very good, but most of the players on in the Welsh Prem, you're not going to be paying your mortgages off with the money you get in, so you can't ask them to overwork, really, because obviously they got their main jobs which pay all their bills. So, Leggy was exactly the same as Nico. He was your friend first, and then if he needed to be a manager, he was a manager as well.
Yeah. No, obviously, of course. Do you said you still keep in contact with Peter Nicholas, and what's he doing these days then?
Nothing much. I know he stopped drinking. But I'm not. I speak to him once in a blue moon, really. Once every few months. I've seen him a few times as well. But Nico's the type of bloke, as if you haven't seen him for 5 years and you bump into him, you'd have a drink with him straight away, and as if you've seen each other every day. So
Yeah, no, yeah, because funny enough, that's what Andy Legg said. He went, "Oh, I haven't seen him in the Blue Moon," but once you do see him, that's
yeah,
it. You have the best catch up ever.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Going on to this one particular moment, because being a former Port Talbot Town player, but you also you went to Athenlido as well at one
Yeah,
stage, didn't you? And there was, of course, it's not a big derby. I know it's a derby. It's a big derby in terms of Welsh football perspective. But when you played for Athenlido and Port Talbot Town, what was the two difference, apart from being two different clubs, what was the different style of football when you played for those two teams?
well, Avon Lido, it was, well, coming towards the end of the career, he had quite a few injuries at the time, and it was Vince Lewis, who used to play for Port Talbot. When I went on loan from the Swans to Port Talbot, he was a player at the time. So Vince rang me at the start of the season and said, do you fancy, we're looking to go up to the Welsh Prem. Do you fancy dropping down and helping me out to see if we can get back up, which is great. I always had a lot of respect for Vince. He's a great guy and a great friend. So, so I said, obviously said yes. So, that year was enjoyable. It was a bit of an eye opener, dropping down a level from the Welsh Prem. Don't get me wrong, but they had they got a very good youth setup at Avon Lido. They always have. But very much didn't get to play against Port Talbot in a derby, Port Talbot Lido derby. But I have managed in it the last few years, which was the experience. But as for playing one, I didn't actually play in one. But they're both great clubs. And it's just unfortunately that as you said, if the season does start, the crowds have started to dwindle with the derbies as well now. So which is a shame. Because I know back in the day they used to have a good 600 or 700 watching the Avon Lido and Port Talbot derbies on a Friday night.
Oh yeah, and I remember because when they were having the court case troubles with the FAW and everything, Port Talbot were the main supporters group or the main club to actually stand by us and say, right, we're right behind you and everything. And in all fairness to him, every time we had a preseason friendly or whatever, there was a game that Port Talbot weren't playing, but Barry were. They always come down in numbers, and I can't thank them enough. But every time we went up to theirs, it was nuts. I mean, I know they've got their drums and we've got our sort of system going. But I remember once, and this is the last time I actually seen a Port Talbot and Athenlido derby, and it was only about 10 of them. And the next, he goes, "Oh, Rhys, record this." And next, they're pulling out flares and then pyros, and they're going absolutely nuts. And I'm thinking, this is Welsh League Division 1, and there's pyro going off. You cannot go wrong with that. But did you ever experience that at Port Talbot during your time, or?
They always had a good sort of backing Port Talbot, to be fair. At the time, I think we were must have been in the top 3 or 4 of the Welsh Prem. So they had, we had a good side, to be fair. And as we done very well in the FAW at the time I was there as well. So, they had some very good players there, very experienced Welsh Premier players, etc. But they always had a good crowd back then. When I first went in the League of Wales, the crowds were good. And when I try and watch, a League of Wales game on the TV, maybe I'll go and watch one, I don't really see the crowd. Like Llanelli used to get, big games, probably 800 on a Friday night. Obviously, that one game we had Barry, it was like 2,500 there. But if you had a Friday night game now in the Welsh Prem, Llanelli probably have about 150, 200, which, I don't know where those fans have gone, but they don't seem to be following the Welsh Prem at all now, really. Evil Corners Key, as you said, they're champions. What do they average? They probably only average about 150, watching them. So I just, as you said, it's back to the FAW. If they don't improve or help clubs out with money, no one's going to watch it because the standard isn't great.
No, yeah, of course. I think the one thing that's helped Llanelli out big time, or it's helped out a lot of South, especially West Wales clubs, is none other than Lee Trundle, who's actually been the amount, I hope I get him on the show one day. He'll be an absolute brilliant guest to come on. I always call him the Honourable Welshman because he's played for more Welsh clubs than he has with English clubs, you know. And you still, I heard last time you were assistant manager at Trefellyn, was it?
Yeah, Trefellyn. Yeah, I took the job at the start of the season. Obviously, I left Lido, and then obviously I spoke to Trefellyn. So it's their first year in the Cymru South. So they're looking to get some experience in to help out Richie Ryan. So it's just obviously gutted that the season hasn't started down to this bloody pandemic. But hopefully, well, doesn't look like there's going to be much of a season. But hopefully, the top brass can put their heads together and realise playing sport is good for your mental health. But they certainly haven't figured that out yet. But hopefully they will.
Yeah, hopefully they will. Someone will bash someone's head and go, look,
exactly.
Common sense. It's common sense. Exactly. But going on to Lee Trundle, just went off a bit then. But Lee Trundle, he must have. What was it like just to see? Because he played for Trefellyn as well, and he played for Llanelli and Flynn. He just took Llanelli by storm, just helping him out big time. How did I remember listening to the Ambition is Critical podcast. Do you know him personally?
Yeah. No Trund well. I was coach at Llanelli when we signed Trund. So obviously Andy Hill had played with Trunds in Neath. Obviously I knew Trunds from the Swans, etc. So we managed to get him in Llanelli and the guys like Peter Pan really Trunds, if you know what I mean. He'll play as long as he can. He limit himself. He come into the pro game very late. I can't remember the age. I think he might have been like 26 maybe, or 27. I'm not sure. But he'll play as long as his legs allow him. He loves it. Absolutely loves, sticking the ball in the back of the net. And I don't think he's going to stop anytime soon, really.
Was you there when he took that infamous penalty where it looks as though he was going to tie his shoelaces and he just tapped it in? That is such. I don't want to call it like a football shithouse, but that was just proper. Yeah, that was. What he was capable of,
that was the Swans Legends. That was the charity game we played down Britain Ferry. We have a Swans Legend team which go and obviously play, for different charities, which is organised by Cam Medwin. So we go around and play different teams. So we all our ex-players meet each other and play on a Sunday in the charity games, which is good because the banter starts flying again and in the changing rooms.
Yeah. As not as a player, not as a player, as someone who's helped clubs like Mumford, Llanelli. He was a big part of Swansea. He played for Real, Rex. I mean, God, the list goes on. But do you think Lee Trundle, even though coming from Liverpool, being an English player and everything, right? Do you think he's improved or helped Welsh football, especially in the league divisions and a lot, just a bit of a boost?
Of course he has. He's a quality player, isn't he? If you know what I mean, the more quality you get in the league, the more people are going to watch, especially with a name like Trunds. As you said, he's a Swansea legend. No disrespect, if there's no football on a Saturday, or Swansea away, and Mumford are playing wherever it is in the Welsh Pyramid, they're going to go, right boy or right girl, do you want to go and watch Trunds play for Mumford? Well, they're not going to turn that down, are they? If you know what I mean. He's great for it, and as you said, he won't stop. He'll keep going as long as he can. To be fair to him.
Yeah, and he's 42 as well. I mean, that is like you said. Yeah, and as like I say, he's Peter Pan. He's not going to age, and he's not going to.
He's going through hair dye. He's going through a lot of hair dye. He's got bagfuls of the stuff. So I think he uses about 2 bottles after every game now to make sure his grey hairs don't show.
Oh, I love it. So where did you finish your career then? Did you finish at Haverford West County, did you? Or
Yeah, well, obviously Leighton James went down there. Obviously got promoted with Lido. Obviously they were in the Welsh Prem again. I was still sort of struggling with injuries. And to be honest, I just didn't want to do the travelling again in the Welsh Prem. So Leighton rung me. So I decided, I played the first think it was like the first 6 or 7 games of that season with having Lido in the Welsh Prem, and I just thought, oh, let's just stay local. Let's go back to the Welsh League Division 1. I think I only played about 6 or 7 games for Avi West, and the injury was getting too bad, and I didn't want to have the operation, so I called time then and said that's it for me.
Yeah. What did you think of the club, Haverford West? Because you played for them a few times in your career.
Yeah,
So
great club. Run by good people. The only problem with Harvey West, because it's so far away from the main cities, if they're having a couple of years where they haven't got a good pool of players to pick from down that way, you're going to have to drag them from obviously Swansea, Cardiff. Now, if you're travelling an extra hour and a half from Swansea to get down there, money-wise, it's quite difficult to get players to travel all the way down there, as you can imagine. So, which isn't easy on the club, really. But, as a club, it's a great club, great setup. The pitch is great. They've got a lovely setup next door as well, so you can't really complain with the club. It's a fabulous club, to be fair.
Yeah, of course. And when you finished your career as a footballer, then, and of course we did mention, you coaching at Llanelli and Trefellyn and everything. Was Llanelli the first club to contact you, or was to come into coaching?
Yeah. It was nice to have a break away from football, if I'm totally honest. As you said, all players start young, but it happened pretty quick for me as a pro. Playing as young as I was. It was nice to have a few years out of it, if I'm totally honest. Got back into my golf on the weekends, which was great. So I enjoyed the time off, really. As most players say, when they finish, the most thing they miss is the banter in the changing rooms, which I did. And obviously, when I took the job in Llanelli with Andy Hill, it was there. It's easier as a coach because you can still be mates to the players, and because you don't have to drop them. If you know what I mean, it's a different role from being manager. It's a lot more sort of interacting with the players and helping them out if they need any questions answered for them. Really.
Yeah, of course. And speaking of managers and players and the relationships and everything, I got to mention this particular person, and it's taken us this long. It's taken me this long to actually mention him, but you did play with him, and now he's managing top flight football, well, international football now, and that's Roberto Martinez. And but I want to mention though, when he first came to Swansea, did you ever think that he was going to have that potential to reach, pivotal moment, whether as a player or as a manager? Did you think that he had something in him that he can prove?
You could tell straight away with Roberto. He's a footballing man through and through. The knowledge he had was unbelievable. As you said, I was still pretty young when he came down. I must have been like 23 or 24. So playing in midfield with them, it was great. He'd give me the license to go forward more, and he'd sit and get on the ball. But as a guy, what a guy! If you give him a ring today, he'd answer, and he'd have a chat with you for a couple of hours about football. He's such a nice guy, such a knowledgeable guy on the game, really. Do I think he could have done more for for his ability in football? Yes, probably, because he had everything apart from probably pace, which as you probably aware, watching football, to be at the top level of the game, you do need to have pace now. So, but as a footballer and a man, you can't speak highly enough of him, really.
Yeah, and when you found out that he was going to be managing Belgium, when after I think he left Everton or it was somewhere else, but I bet you were very proud to think, fair play, you've gone from 4th division or 3rd division playing in football, and now you're managing Romelu Lukaku and Eden Hazard, and that must have been something,
Well, it just says it all about the man, really, because they always say, the good managers have been there, done it. Okay, yes, he was a pro footballer, but he wasn't at the top level of the game. It just shows his knowledge of football, that those players have respect for him and listen to what he has to say, really. as you said, Wigan, he done, to win the FA Cup with a side like Wigan, let's be fair, is unbelievable, really. But may long continue for him, really, because you couldn't wish on a nicer guy, to be honest with you.
And on that note, I just want to say as well, thank you for coming on the Dragons Always podcast, just to talk about football, just talk about stuff in general. It's always fun to hear from different perspectives of individuals who have either played Welsh football, played in the English League, but playing for the internationals. But you've done it. You played for international football, Welsh football in the English League system. But thank you so much for doing this. And final question, I always ask this. How do you look back on your career?
I have some regrets. I don't think I fulfilled my ability to the maximum, but when I look back, I'm proud of what I've done as well. I think most players would say exactly the same. I enjoyed my time. I absolutely loved it. I loved the banter in the change rooms day in, day out, with different players and different boys. But as you said, I don't think I fulfilled my ability, but I'm proud of what I've done. So I'm happy with that. I can live with that, if I'm honest with you.
And on that note, that's all we got time for as well. But again, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the Dragons Voice podcast just to talk about your career. It means a lot, and I wish you all the very best in the future as well, especially with Trefelyan.
Brilliant. Great talking to you as well, pal. Much appreciated for having me on.
No worries, no problem at all. And on that note, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Dragons Voice podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it. And again, that was Andrew Mumford talking about his career, playing for Swansea, playing for Wales, and in the Welsh League system. So, guys, again, thank you so much. But make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel and the videos, and follow us on Twitter as well, Dragons Voice 20. Give us a like on Facebook. Do what you got to do. But again, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for your support. I'm Rhys, and I'll see you next time. Take care.